on the Book of Numbers.
Pastor Stephen A. Green, Pastor Will Grandberry, and Tasha Page Lockhart.
Headlines and more. Tonight on the Book of Numbers. Good evening, and thanks so much for spending some time with us tonight for the Book of Numbers as we decode data for thriving ministry. It has been a tough week. When I say tough week, tough doesn't even do it any justice. This has been one heck of a week. We've had everything from Joe Biden and his stuff to George Floyd's murder to Central Park Kathy to now the Texas arrest. I guess we'll begin with Joe Biden. Here's the thing with Joe. The former vice president is Joeing us. Many people are surprised that he has said what he said. And just in case you don't know what he said, he was saying at the end of an interview with Charlemagne that if you didn't know who you want to vote, if you didn't know if you want to vote for him or Trump, then you're not black. This was tacky to say the very least, but Joe is tacky. Joe never really quite gets it right. Joe kind of sits in a place of inappropriate language, and I want us to know that this is not going to be Joe's last blooper, if that's what we want to call it. I don't want to take it too lightly, but I also want us to just remember who Joe Biden is, and Joe is just Joeing. For the people who are challenging us, saying things like, so are you still going to vote for Joe Biden? Yep, I am. My other option is to vote for Trump, even if I don't vote, and I really can't let that happen. Many people are calling for Joe to show us a black agenda. If you want us to vote, show us a black agenda. I know I'm lowering my standards right now, but just show me a human agenda, because what the man in the White House is doing right now, has nothing to do with humanity. And so I know I should have greater expectations right now, and my bar is pretty low, unfortunately. But I'm not going to not vote for Joe Biden. He would have to do a whole lot for me not to vote for him. I'm not going to pretend like that's not true. And I need him to have a human agenda, because we see that the man in the White House right now does not. And so you ain't going to punk me out of it by putting up those posts talking about, so y'all still going to vote for Joe. Give me another option, because it's not the one who's in the White House right now. Again, I also want us to talk about and think about what it means to have a black agenda, because black agenda doesn't just impact black people. Usually it impacts people. It's going to impact poorer people in rural areas as well. It's going to impact a number of people. So even a black agenda wouldn't just impact black people. But I'm not going to pretend like I don't want a black agenda. If we're honest, Obama didn't have a black agenda. He had a human agenda, and I'm not going to hate on him for that. But he did not have a black agenda. But we do need to make sure things that we have some type of equity in this, right? It's not equality, it's equity. And so that's what we should really look for. Moving on past Joe Biden Joeing us while we all act surprised because Joe is being Joe. We all know that George Floyd was murdered by a police officer who put his knee in his neck and cut off his breathing. We know that there were other police officers standing around. We know that this was caught on video. We understand that he cried out for help, and the people around him were crying out for help. George Floyd was a man who was trying to start again from Houston, Texas. He was a kind person who was always willing to help. People spoke well of him and are still speaking well of him. And his murder was unnecessary, to say the very least. Now people are upset because people are there rioting. And I guess it started off as protesting, but now because they're looting, they're using the word riot. When I saw the word riot yesterday, I was like, oh, they spelled protest wrong. Either way it goes, I have no problem with it. Do whatever you got to do. This is a country that was built on the backs of Black people. And so if Black people feel that the country is not treating us appropriately, because that's what we know, and they decide that their rage ends up in looting or whatever, I'm not the one to tell anyone to stop. Rage is something that is not disciplined, so you cannot tell people what rage looks like. And as far as looting, I mean, all of America is stolen. So how much could they do that America didn't do in Target? I'm not getting on this whole we shouldn't loot. And then they always say things like, but you're tearing up your whole community. Oh, okay. My mama told me you can't tear up something that don't belong to you and call it yours. So if they're tearing up their community, does that mean that like 60% of the businesses there are owned by Black people who live in the community? Or is it 80% of the, oh, none of them? Yeah, those percentages are not that high. So to tell Black people that they're destroying their own community, that community that they do not own is just ridiculous as well. We can go ahead and move on. Before we move on, I want to say that this has been some kind of couple of weeks from Breonna Taylor to Ahmaud Arbery, now to George Floyd. From what I understand, in New York City, the people have come out of quarantine to go and protest themselves, and God bless them and keep them with COVID around. I'm also a little pissed off that they had the nerve to tear gas or whatever, put pepper spray on the people who were attempting to protest peacefully in the midst of COVID. How are you giving people respiratory issues when we know that makes them more easier it makes it easier for them to contract COVID? Like, really, this is what we're doing? But I'm not surprised at it. And I mean, I understand that people in New York should be quarantined, but racism isn't taking any time off. Racism is not resting. So I guess protesters and activists shouldn't either. And I understand that there's more that we have to do. People are now saying you got to do more than protest, and I get it, and I understand. So you do what works for you, and you let protesters do what works for them. If you can handle public policy, then you go do your good work. If you can sit at the table and change some decisions, then you go do your good work. If you're an attorney and you handle the case, you do what you need to do. But you can't tell anybody else how they're going to participate in this movement. And so we get to see what happened to George Floyd because they said that they believe someone was writing a bad check. I don't know how you believe somebody's writing a bad check. If it's a bad check, then when you try to clear it or whatever, I guess it tells you that the check doesn't go through. Or you just looked at him and decided he didn't have money. I don't know what it is, but I tell you one thing. I don't care if he wrote a $2 million check. I know one thing, he should still be alive. There are people who steal every day, and they are writing bad checks on America. America's in so much debt, don't make no sense. That's a bad check every time we send money somewhere. But guess what? America's still here thriving. At least wealthy Americans are still here and thriving. I'm trying to move on, but I want us to say that this is more than just a hashtag, and it's more than just pray for me. But we live in a corrupt world that we just have to change by any means necessary. And I'm not attempting to incite violence. What I am saying is I'm not going to be here and sit in judgment of anyone else and how they decide to respond to this. If we move forward a little bit to the traffic stop gone wrong in Texas, you see a young man who ends up in front of his home, and he said he didn't get out of the car for 6 minutes because he'd had some run-ins with the police, and he knew that I guess his life could be in danger. And so they go to his home, they follow him to his home, and he's on the front lawn with his hands up. And police officers are yelling at him with their guns drawn, more than one. From what I understand, there were like 5 of them saying, put your hands up, put your hands where I can see them. I mean, what do you want him to do? Like bop or something, or Millie Rock? He has his hands up. What else can he do to show you his hands and make you feel safe? And so I don't blame him for waiting 6 minutes before he decided to acquiesce to their attempt to arrest him. Because guess what? If they hadn't had that many witnesses and cameras around, I'm not sure that he wouldn't be George Floyd. And speaking of, I'm not sure if he wouldn't be George Floyd, let's move along to little Miss Central Park, who tried to incite this same type of experience when she said, I ain't gonna call the police on you. You know what? I could see if we didn't understand what calling the police meant. But she said, I'm gonna call the police and tell them an African-American man. And that's ridiculous. And I know she was fired from her job, and I know they repoed her dog, as Kamau Bell said it. But what's beyond that? From what I understand, our senator here in Texas, who I'm actually very fond of, Royce West, is asking for them to arrest her for what she's done because she put his life in jeopardy, and she's wasting resources calling 911 because if they would have come out, that would have been a lot of taxpayer dollars. But just like Senator Royce West believes Central Park Kathy needs to be arrested, I also believe that he needs to look into what's happening with the Dallas police officers who decided to arrest the young man in front of his home in Texas, the young man who had his hands up, and they're saying, raise your hand, show me your hands. Senator West, I hope that you have the same type of passion about about the fate of these police officers as you do Central Park Kathy. And because I believe in you, I'm sure you do. We believe in you. We have great expectations for what you're going to do. And I'm glad to know that you're around and not being quiet and not being silenced. And I'm just praying that you use your voice in this situation as well. And for the chief of police here in Dallas, you, Renee Hall, this really has nothing to do with what I intended to say, but I just wanted to say, Chief Hall, you could just do a lot more and say a lot more. I'm gonna try to keep this going, but I'm in a kind of pissed off mood today, and so we probably need to bring on Stephanie LaFlora before this goes bad really quickly. But you, Renee Hall, we're in a great situation, and I'm really hoping to see you stand up in a new way, because what worked last year, oh wait, it didn't work. What didn't work last year definitely won't work right now, because people are tired of having law enforcement on their necks, no pun intended. Hi, Stephanie. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Dr. Parker.
It is a day. You hear me?
It's been a week, It really has been. I mean, this has been going on for decades, and our social media feeds for the last 10 years have been exhausting. And this is one of the heavier weeks, honestly, I think, in years. And what makes it heavier is just the pile on from so much tragedy, from coronavirus to unemployment to catastrophic administration. Yes, I said it. And the reminder that being Black is always worse. So I think that it's just been really heavy. And when we look at our social media feeds, especially I think mine, I think everyone's, there's a lot of politics on there. There's a lot of tragedy on there. There's a lot of strong opinions on our social media feeds. But I honestly think that this week has been one of the most emotional weeks that I've seen in my feed, from anchors, from different activists talking to just people that I went to high school and college with. I have not seen people react so strongly to anything than I have this week, even though things have been just as tragic in the past. And I really think it's because of that combination of all of the different factors that people are processing. It's interesting. I was looking at some other studies. Of course, we talk about data all the time, but I'm also always looking at data that's just being collected everywhere. And the Census Bureau data shows that 1/3 of Americans are showing signs of clinical anxiety or depression right now. And this is a recent study.
Yeah.
That is profound. That is profound. That is a crazy number. And so I think that as people, and that's a national general population study, that's not even zeroing in on the Black community and seeing where we are. And it's very distinct from where we were. They did a similar study in 2014, and these numbers were actually double what they saw then. And so it's really significant, I think, just the level of anxiety and fear, I think, that people are experiencing. I was talking to someone recently about just how dominant fear has been right now. And I think it's interesting to step back and think, no matter the perspective of whatever person, whether it be a Black person seeing, we had a conversation earlier today about what conversations are we having with the young people in our lives? I have a 2-year-old son. What am I thinking about regarding his future? I was riding a bike today. I was walking down the street and I was thinking about, okay, if a cop came right now, this is a real thought I had. If a cop came right now and things got out of control, what would I do? That's a real thing that I was thinking about today. And I just think that there really aren't any words, like I always come on here and I'm always passionate about being hopeful and about giving a message of positivity, even if the data is not looking great, just to encourage people. And I didn't have a lot today. I really didn't. I think but I'll try anyway. And I think that we are more powerful than we are told.
Absolutely.
The evidence is everywhere. The fear is not a reaction to us being animals. The fear is a reaction to us being powerful.
Yeah.
And it's an attempt to assassinate our belief in who we are and whose we are.
Yeah.
You know. And so I just wanted to say that because I think that's really important. But we do have some new information and some new data.
We do. Stephanie, I'm so excited because for the first week, we can begin to give them data from Black churches who are on the platform. What platform? weeklypastorpoll.com/BMC. And so I'm so you don't understand how excited I've been waiting to get to this day. Right. Even though the number is not as large as we want them to be yet, just to be able to say, listen, we had enough to be able to gather some data and tell you what we're thinking and who we are. This is a great day. It is a great day. See, I just feel so much better. I hope nobody reminds me of all the reasons I can't feel great right now. But
well, I think data is a very empowering thing, and it allows us to make accurate, or at least more accurate and more informed decisions. And so it is a good thing. And so while we want to get back, what we've been seeing is that the data is actually showing that we, and when I say that, I mean Black people, are not in a hurry to get back to church right now, actually. There are some differences demographically, though, that I've seen. But I think right now we're grieving, we're processing, and we're getting ourselves together. Yeah. That's where we are.
And all those things are fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so a couple of interesting things that I saw was 40% of the Black Millennial Cafe survey takers have said that they will wait several additional weeks before attending, even after governments start to lift bans. 40%. And that's in comparison to a national study that is not as densely concentrated in terms of Black people, that their percentage was 23%. So that's a pretty significant difference, I think.
I was actually happy. I can have a feeling about data. I just try to translate it, with as little bias as possible. But I was so excited to see that we're not in a rush to go back. Not only we're not in a rush to go back, some people even were saying they would wait even longer than that. And I was just really clapping it up, because if we're going to be disproportionately affected by COVID, then we have to disproportionately decide to stay home. You know what I mean? We have to make decisions understanding that we're not in the same position as other churches and other communities.
Well, I don't want to bum you out, but I do think it's very important to mention this one piece, and that is actually there's quite a generational divide when it comes to willingness to come back. So it looks like
we're gonna let me stay excited and happy.
We're gonna get back to it. This is a ride. This is a ride. But this is the power, right? Because we can have this conversation now with these people, and the generation that's most eager to get back is actually ours. So 48%.
Anyway, it's funny when you say eager to get back. I'm like, y'all wasn't going nowhere but online anyway. The majority of y'all wasn't in nobody's church. Stop playing. They just leave the house. I don't know if they're actually going back to the house of the Lord.
I mean, well, you know what's funny? I talked to my grandmother today. She's watching. Hi, grandmother. I love you. But I talked to her today, and she was saying that doing church online has been really great and really pleasant. And she's really enjoyed it, and she's been encouraged by it. So, I think that's interesting. But 48% of Gen Zs and millennials say that they will return at the first opportunity.
Yes, for that first Sunday, Stephanie. And then after that, they're going to be gone with the wind. Okay.
But they're bored. We're bored. Come on. Boredom is very important.
Girl, we go watch paint dry. They're like, you want to go to a paint drying party? We ready. We ready.
So for that stat that just showed 34% of the general Black population that we surveyed said they would return at the first opportunity versus 59%, which was the national norm. And then for Gen Zs, though, which I think is really important to just point out, is 48%. That's almost half. So I do think that there's a little bit of a divide, and I'm sure that that's because, millennials and Gen Zs are not as concerned about getting sick. They feel more confident that they will be healthy, even if they did contract virus. and that they would be okay.
I have a 17-year-old here in Stephanie, and here in Dallas, Stephanie, and I want to highlight that this 17-year-old here in Dallas died from COVID. And so I understand that might not be the majority of the numbers, but I think we need to stop believing that there is a demographic that cannot be impacted by COVID, because it's just not true. I remember when this first happened, I was working in Atlanta with one of your coworkers, and I'm like, "Ooh, I'm gonna get tickets to Mexico." Like legit, I was looking up tickets to Mexico because they were saying that younger people wouldn't be impacted. And in a week, I was like, "Oh wait, something's wrong." And in 2 weeks, they had a 36-year-old Black woman who was a principal in New York, and she contracted COVID and died. And I was like, "So I'm gonna stay home."
No, that's absolutely real. I mean, I know we've been really hunkered down in our home for sure. But I am definitely one of those people that's like, I will wait and see what's happening before. I look at data too much, and the data was showing me that I needed to stay home. But I do think, though, that people are becoming more interested in more. We actually talked about this last week about how people, as they continue to experience online church, online worship, meeting in small groups digitally, that I believe that people's attitudes towards that will change, because they will eventually experience some warmth. They will eventually experience some community. And part of that is just our lack of doing that regularly. I know that I'm not a person who would enjoy being on, a birthday party on live or not live, I'm sorry, on a video chat or something like that. But I have recently warmed up to it, and I'm like, okay, I need some people time. I need my people. I'm cool with now spending some time just chatting it up in ways that normally I would not be interested. So I think that because of that, people are actually starting to be more interested in online church as a longer term thing. And some of the data shows that 53% of the people who took the survey from BMC said that they want to keep all activities online to see what happens, even after cities are cleared for public gathering. And
praise God.
That's really significant, I think. And to compare, only 25% of the like national poll said that. So that is a stark difference in data. Yeah, it is. That is more than 25% increase. That's really, really significant. So I think that people are experiencing church, and they're starting to their opinions about online worship and community is starting to evolve, and it's because they're doing it more, right? You got to remember that a large percentage of people did not, especially when we're talking about across generations, how much social interaction did they really have online? I mean, aside from the occasional Facebook post or something like that. Like working in tech myself, I have had tons of working from home and having Zoom calls way before this. But there's people who never heard of Zoom until this happened. And so the time for people to adjust from the way things were to the way things are now, it takes time. And I think as people experience it, they open up. I think there's an opening up that's happening. And so, one thing I've been saying is that the new normal is now. I think we keep waiting for a new normal to arrive. Right. I think it's now. I think it will evolve, but I think that we're in it.
Yeah. And this is one thing I keep thinking about, we're getting to the place where everybody has like this re-entry plan, right? Like this is what we're going to do when we go back. And I think we're forgetting that, atrophy is a thing. When you do something long enough, it becomes just the way of life. If I keep my arm in a sling long enough, you know what I mean? Like by the time they take it off, I still hold my arm close to my chest and up because that's all I know. And if we're like this, if the majority of our life is going to be like this for even a year before we're like really comfortable,
that's a long time.
When they do open up, people aren't going to rush, not only because we'll have a little bit of fear, even if they had a vaccine. It's like, oh no, I do stuff online. Oh no, why would I walk back into that building?
Right. Because you have to remember that during this entire time, behaviors are changing.
Absolutely.
Right? Like if it takes 21 days to form a habit, we're like 60 days into this joint.
Listen, every time I think about putting on jeans, I'm like, we don't wear those things. You know what I mean? Like,
I have not. I know. I've worn them a few times just to say I did, and then like an hour in, I'm like, why do I I don't know why I'm still doing this.
I don't think I can fit mine, so I'm just not gonna sit there and stress myself out about something that I just can't do. This is just a weird time, and I think we're forgetting that people are gonna have to figure out how to release box office hits to us in our home. When these things start to happen, I mean, think about it. The bar was changed. The bar is now all written, and it's done online. Yeah, and the July one at least is written. Wow. It's done online. The one in Michigan, I believe, at the very least, but that may be how they're doing it across the board. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, when the bar can change, sugar, everybody has to think about new normal. Right. Like the bar. So I was like, how can I register for that one right now? Because I might just be a lawyer But it's just wild because, and I think we've gotten past the whole, this is an attack on the church, But let me say this, people have become so comfortable with social media that right now, Mark Zuckerberg pissed people off by saying that social media shouldn't correct people, even though Mark Zuckerberg puts people in jail all the time, Facebook jail. I mean, well, he really doesn't put them in jail, Twitter does, but Facebook will delete your tweets. I mean, your posts based on what you say. And so Facebook does censor in a way, and they will delete your post. So for him to say that Jack shouldn't put out the correct links to the truth was just ridiculous. But then they're like, somebody was saying, do I feel a Facebook boycott coming on? I'm like, oh, y'all can't because all your church is on Facebook. So if you're mad, what you gonna do?
I mean, I think that the real power of Facebook is data. Everybody knows that. Right?
Absolutely.
Like that's what makes data that's what makes Facebook what it is. Nobody even thought about data at the level that Facebook did until now. Like everything that we know the way it is today wouldn't even be the same without data, because that was the first time that people were willingly and happily offering their opinion, their viewpoints on literally everything. And so I think that one of the takeaways for me with that is that churches, organizations, community leaders, y'all need to be empowered with data.
Yeah,
really do, because that's the real power behind everything that exists there. And that's if there's any resistance, the resistance is really to protect that entity. And so I think that this is an opportunity. I mean, we've been talking about this for weeks now, but this is an opportunity to have powerful, significant data, not just at a one-time basis, but on an ongoing longitudinal basis where you can look and see change over time and be able to tell stories and to honestly write stories by seeing what data changes different things. And so being able to use that data in order to empower your strategy, I think is something to learn from that.
I agree. I think that we haven't always even known how to use data, how it's beneficial. Everybody being on the platform makes it very clear. And so I do want them to go to irunbmc.com/events and go ahead and register to take the poll. The pastor poll, I want to make clear, is something we want pastors to take weekly. So, what's changing, how you're growing, what you need, what we need to address. And so I just feel like this platform is amazing, and it gives you the opportunity not to just guess and be poor stewards of your money and your resources, but to hit your target. And so, I got a new campaign coming and it's Say No to Fact-Free Ministry. People do not have to do fact-free ministry. Data plus divinity can get you to your destiny. You do discern the times and pray to God, but you also look at the data, and you let the discernment and let God do God's divine work, and then you put it together and hit, go to your destiny. And I think we have to get to that point. And speaking of discerning the times and doing the ministry that'll get you to your destiny, Stephanie, want to see you a little later because we got to bring on Pastor Will Grandberry, who's going to talk to us a little bit about what it means to be a youth and young adult pastor in this time of COVID. And so if you could go ahead and clap in the comments or push a like or a heart or a share, go ahead and show my friend Pastor Will Grandberry some love.
Yo, I'm so glad to be here. Yo, you're so dope. Data plus divinity can get you to your destiny. I have to do that.
Please do.
Glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Listen, we're glad to have you. We really wanted to make sure we did a show that brought on younger pastors intentionally, not just because I run the Black Millennial Cafe, but because many people have this kind of wrong. Someone was saying, even in the chat, like older people are ready to get back to, you know, all time traditional things. And it's like, actually, no, Black millennials are like, take me back to church. Again, I think we'll do anything right now to get out the house. You know, we'll do just about, we'll be like, I want a grocery shop now, you know, all of a sudden. But what are you seeing among youth and young adults of faith right now?
Well, I'm saying, one, thankful for this opportunity, and totally want to shout out to every person that is watching and those that will watch, that you need to follow and get along or get aligned with the mission that you're doing. I totally agree that in this season, it has been very difficult to navigate ministry at large, but particularly trying to find the actual way of targeting our population. What I am saying, though, is what I've been saying even before this pandemic began. I always believe that crisis really reveals conflict or chaos. And that's definitely what has been exposed to in our area, particularly in the area of exposing to what wasn't there, what we didn't have in place. We already saw a tremendous migration of individuals who were already watching online anyway. So not saying anything completely different in the area of millennials and Generation Z. However, Generation Z is one of the most toughest generations to target in regards to faith. They have an extreme palate for supernatural things per se, or things are, you know, beyond the normality of traditional church, but they're still not connected to the institutional environment. So it's very difficult to get that teenager to wake up on Sunday morning to look at TV. For the most part, they want to stay asleep. They need pancakes. They don't want to do anything. So it's been a real, I'll say, opportunity to expose myself to the need for data, because for so long, we've just lived in a silo. We were comfortable with the infrastructure of the church, guaranteeing that these people will come, but being located in the District of Columbia, where most of our congregation are not DC residents, it's made it very difficult to kind of connect. So we've been very intentional in this season of how to do a couple of things to make sure that we're yet relevant and we're yet on the map.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because when it comes to Gen Z, you know, I know my limits, right? You don't know that my sister is deceased. So my mom and I raised my niece and nephew. One is 24, so he's millennial like I am, and one is 22. And you know, listen, 22 and below, it's difficult. You know, I have a grandbaby who turns 1 tomorrow because my niece has a son. And so I just can't imagine, you know, what it means to do it daily. Now, programming I can do, but outside of programming, I'm like, listen, we got to use data, because they're not a monolith, right? And some of this is regional, you know, it's contextual, definitely. And so data is like probably our best friend when it comes to demographics that we just kind of don't know how to meet, you know, where they are. And they're in so many different places.
I've taken the approach. I have 4 things that I lead by: is rest, relate, respond, and revamp. And
wait a minute. You've been resting. I heard you took a social media break.
I took the longest social media break, and after this couple of weeks, I want to take another one. And a lot of that, honestly, is because I believe a lot of people have made a God out of relevancy. There's been an extreme push to be the most innovative, the most creative, and we think that having those constructs is going to supplement an actual impact on the generation. And what I've found is that no matter how creative I become, there's still elementary truths that these generation persons require. And that's to know that they are significant, to know that they're loved by the Almighty, to know that they have security, that there's a purpose and a plan over their lives. And so the rest is, I think, necessary, because it allowed me to unplug from just the chase of having to always be on and always have something to say and always having something to do, because suddenly we compete with other churches or other people, and you want to make sure that you're doing it the best. And so it no longer becomes about the people you're serving. It really becomes about the person that's being served. And I didn't want that to jeopardize where we were. And then we had to be relatable. What does it mean to relate to such a population? How significant is our ministry? What type of constructs so we've tried to provide? We've migrated all of our individual programming for youth and young adults to the main platform. Because that was something I felt was critical, because we weren't getting a lot of, you have youth ministry, you have their own pages, and you have 40 people that come on, and sometimes it's their parents making them come on.
Right.
Have a natural church-wide emphasis on this demographic, we found more traction. So what I've done is identify various youth, get them the exposure to be platformed. So now it's a buy-in, not only from the youth, also from the family, to create a level of traction. Then we also have the notion of just really taking the connection of connecting and reconnecting. And I've done individually, you don't understand how daunting it is to have to go back to calling people. Your, really just not anything social media, but check in. How are you doing? What do you need? And I found that to be rewarding. And then lastly, we're really honestly in a period of not knowing what to do and being okay with not knowing what to do. And really taking the time to say, what does youth and young adult ministry look like, given that this virus is not going anywhere? Like, we can't have separate youth church as we've done it in the past. So, what technological, innovative ways we're going to do to make sure that the youth are still getting the gospel and connected with, but also still maintaining a level of authenticity as well. So it's a whole lot, but I hope I said something.
No, you did. I appreciate it. And so if you haven't yet, you need to share this so that people can actually see it. Host the watch party, whatever you got to do. But so wait, someone in the chat is saying rest, relate, revamp. There was one more.
Oh no, I did. I added a reconnect, but it's really respond. Yeah.
Okay,
respond.
So tell me this. You said you were calling to say, hey, what do you need? What are they saying they need?
Well, some of them are saying, leave me alone. But no, for the most part, I think what we have to understand with this population is, as any child, it's irresponsible for a parent to mandate for the child to declare what it needs. I feel that the discernment is critical in this season so that we can pick up, because they don't know what they need. They're in a season where many of them cannot graduate from high school, didn't graduate the traditional way from high school. There's no proms. There are no conveniences that all of us had the luxury of, just, the modern day. So they're in a nuanced type of world. So what I'm doing now is being more supportive, being more visible. And this is something that I know a lot of church people don't like. I'm trying to be honest, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to provide this narrative that things can be another way. At least you're graduating. I'm not saying that because I think that that's sensitive. The reality is they don't have a prom. They did not graduate the way I wanted. And so the truth is, things are not normal, but neither is your calling, right? So speaking life to them, what your destiny is so uniquely different. And you're going to impact the world in so many different ways. And so my word for this season has just been unprecedented. And that's all around for any person doing ministry. You cannot even think toward normal at all. Get that out your mind. And that's new. The new is the key.
Yeah, I think because I'm always down for the underdog, right? And so I must admit that when people talk about not being able to like graduate or not being able to go to prom, I do think about the young person who was stressed because they didn't have money for prom, or they were stressed because for some reason they won't graduate and they didn't know how they were going to deal with their friends and how embarrassed they might be. And I just have to be honest that some people were blessed that some of these things did not transpire,
No. I think that when we all can come to the conclusion after this is done, this should have given everybody an opportunity to discern what is effective and who is effective. I think my word is essential. And I've been a youth and young adult pastor now for about 6 years.
Okay.
And I'm challenged because for most churches our size, there are pastors over children, pastors over teens, pastors over young adults, and I just happen to be the pastor over all demographics. And then so it has forced me to, one, be organized, forced me to be very systematic as to our approach on how strategic we are in our planning. But for the most part, all we were doing was programs. But I feel in this season, and I'm looking forward to your data that we can do, but honestly, how many of our programs have produced disciples? How many of our events have created individuals who really know Jesus? Or have they just been something that they've gone to? And so generations have passed through our church with no ability to articulate the gospel. And so me, I'm trying to get back to the foundation of less is more, and taking the humbling approach to say that we may not have to invest so much money in artists and things of that nature, especially when they don't have a direct connect to the population we're trying to serve.
Right. And I'm like, when people bring in artists, especially like for youth, I'm like, they ain't listen to them. Like, I mean, you know, like y'all think we're gonna put in a lot of money, they're gonna all of a sudden flood the sanctuary. No, as a matter of fact, they decided I'm gonna come for Pastor Will anyway. I don't want to hear that. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the truth. And when I was doing my research, I did my doctoral research on Black millennials and faith. And when I did it, I found some group that I think you'll be interested in called the Fugitive. And the Fugitive is someone who grows up in church. They participate in all of the programs, what do they call it? The lock-ins, the Easter speeches. And when they get 18, they leave and go to college. When they come back home, people are saying things like, we got to get them back in church. But the truth is they never won them because they were there all that time and they were respectful, but they never bought into Jesus, right? They didn't buy into what we were selling. And so we get to this point where we're trying to retain them, but you actually have to recruit them because we didn't have them. And I think many people have raised a great number of fugitives. And so now they're running away from church and we're trying to run behind them and bring them back in. So I think you're on the right track. I love to work with you and get some data and, you know, make this happen. But I want to say before this segment is over, I just want to thank you for your work and for being humble enough and lacking enough ego for you to be able to sit and listen and hear and know you don't have all the right answers, but to be okay with that and to just figure out what they need. I really appreciate that in your ministry.
I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to all of your research because ultimately we want to be effective, and not just because it's in our mind. We want to be effective because we're actually meeting the needs of the people that we're serving. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And all the youth and young adult pastors I see and all the, you know, ideas they come with, I want to tell you that I do believe that you are effective, but will be effective because your mindset is right. And so many times people want to approach youth and young adult ministry like as a champion, right? Something they have to conquer. And it's like, slow down, buddy.
Slow down. You had no choice but to slow down.
Right. True. Thank you so much, Pastor Will. I appreciate having you.
Blessings to you. Okay.
Blessings to you. So now we're going to go ahead and switch to a mobilization segment. And I'm really excited about it because I get to introduce to some and present to others a good friend of mine, Pastor Stephen A. Green, who is from Herd AME Church. And if you talk about justice, if you talk about activism or mobilization, and you bring up a young adult pastor, they probably won't get past 3 before you hear the name Stephen Green. So welcome so much.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me and see me?
I can hear and see you. How you been?
Praise God. I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
Listen, we hanging in these COVID streets these days. You know, it's one thing to deal with COVID. It's another thing to deal with COVID, Joe Biden, remember Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, now Floyd, Central Park, Kathy, you know what I mean? Like all of this, it's just so much. Sure. It's just a lot.
Yeah, it's a very unique place to be in because it seems like everything is crashing at once. It seems as that, you know, here we are in a pandemic that is not one that is economic, not one that is just health, but one that is social. And here we are in a social pandemic, one that shows the true virus that's at the soul of humanity. And I think that, but because of this sort of triad of crises, triad of pandemic sensibilities, I think it gives us a moment to really look beyond where we are and sort of recognize that, all that you've been talking about today is that this is a new normal. We are literally at a zenith of being able to create the society we want to live in. And I'm like, this is the best time to be alive. What a time to be alive.
Yeah. I'm with you. There are a lot of things, a lot of unknown, and I can take most things that are unknown. It is a little more difficult for me to not really have a plan for mobilization. So I work a lot with the Black Church Back and Live Free with messaging and do data and polling for them and different things. But that's probably the scariest part of all of this, right? Not even when we're gonna have a vaccine, because it will come and I can stay inside until it does. And I want that to happen. But I'm like, what does it mean to mobilize right now? What does it mean to get people to the polls when this may mean that once again, Black people will have to die for the right to vote?
Right.
I just don't know that I can wrap my head around us again in 2020 dying to vote because of a pandemic and a preschooler who is refusing to allow us to mail in ballots or doing his best to stop it because he can't lose.
Sure. Yeah, I think that this is it raises a very vital question, and you have as Congress is trying to ensure that everyone can mail in ballots in order to protect that sanctity of the right to vote. But yet in Texas, the Supreme Court made a decision that says, hey, coronavirus is not a strong enough symptom to stop you from being able to go to the polls. And so we've seen a level of overt evil as a result of these policies that are at the root, at the crux of a failure of democracy. I mean, if you don't have access to the ballot box, you don't have a democracy, right? And so here we are having to recognize for once what Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman have shown us before is that America, you've never truly had a democracy. What Martin King and Malcolm X came and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ida B. Wells showed us is that this has never been a democracy. We have been an oligarchy. We are a multiple. Now we're a fascist society because of a president named Trump. But we literally have yet to become a democracy, which is one that is egalitarian for all, where everyone has access to the rights to liberty, justice, and equality. So I think that you're right. We have to recognize that the church is needed now more than ever to push a progressive agenda that would ensure that we have the right to vote, that would ensure that people are able to, make sure that they have food on the table. I mean, every Black pastor I know and every pastor I know, really, this is cross racial lines, are dealing with the reality that there's a severity of food scarcity in our communities. That the lines for every church that is doing something right now is probably opening up their kitchen, opening up their church as a food pantry. We have 38 million people probably in this country right now who are impoverished and who are unemployed, and millions more are unemployed. And so you literally have the church on the front line doing social services while the government sits back and continues to allow Facebook and these tech companies to evade taxes while our democracy is fledgling right in front of everybody's eyes and nobody wants to say anything about it.
Yeah, it's when I think about people saying it's a new day. I'm like, it's a new day and an old day at the same time. You know what I mean? Like we've kind of seen this before. We never expected to see it here, or shouldn't have been able to see it here. But when we talk about what it means for, like you talked about, churches doing social service, which is something that is not new, but it's also not the main responsibility of the church right now, not because the church doesn't want to do it, but because the government has a responsibility that they're not holding themselves accountable to handling. But for churches doing social services and things, people are saying, what is the role of the church? And I'm like, not what is the role of the church? What is the role of the church today? And I know some people are saying the role of the church has never changed. The role of the church, maybe at its core, has not changed, right, Stephen?
Right.
What the church looks like.
Sure.
To actively participate in this society and undergird their community has definitely changed.
Absolutely. The church has for once has to recognize that they are going to have to be more like Jesus than ever before. Is that, you know, we were not doing church, we were doing capitalism religion, right? And so we were doing religion masqueraded as capitalism, or capitalism masqueraded as religion, and trying to pack as many bodies as we can into one place to sell the gospel of religion. And so for once now, Christ has come to deem the church again, and to turn over the tables in such a way that you have to actually do the ministry of Christ, which is social justice and social service. Is how do I meet people and, you know, feed them 2 fish and 5 loaves and liberate those who are oppressed. You know, so we literally have to do both at the same time. You have to do social justice and social service, because that's what Christ was about. And if you're going to have a church, if you want to be actually viable and relevant in this moment, you have to do both. You have to be in the trenches. You have to be doing that, because as you see, you know, every city is one video camera away from popping off, right? The police are literally mobilized and militarized as an army of white supremacy right now. We have, you know, militias being formed in Brunswick, Georgia, of white men who are literally on the hunt for black bodies. You know, so you know, white women in Central Park are literally after Ava DuVernay just put out that movie, and we hope that everybody got a chance to see it. So you're trying to tell me that all the white women who watch Netflix did not watch Ava DuVernay's movie?
Absolutely. I'm here to tell you that.
Wow. That ought to be a requirement to use Netflix, is that everybody in this country must have racial justice training. Y'all need to understand that this nation is immoral and corrupt. And so, like, you, before you even check on Facebook, if you want to sign a disclaimer to say that, you know, I'm signing away my rights to data, to sign away my rights to be trained on every one of these, you know, these platforms, to understand how race is literally embedded in inequality and injustice in the fabric of this nation.
Yeah. I don't want to let you go without talking about some of the innovative things you've done. Every time I'm actually on the BMC page, I think I'm like, hey, this is good. This is good. Because you did, I thought it was really great. And I saw some people do it after you, but I'm going to shout you out as being the first when you did the tiny desk.
I was. I definitely did that first.
Places. Okay.
That was week 1 of quarantine. Everybody was like, oh.
Absolutely. I want to tell you, I thought you did a great job with that. And I'm like, why did I not think of this when you did? I forgot what it was, but it was something for dummies, and you used the book cover. I really like that. And then this education cover, I really appreciated that. And I'm not really one for, like, you know, gimmicks, right? But I trust every time you do something, because I know you and your character, your integrity, that there's great content behind it. And then, you know, you come out with this stuff, and then now other people, you know, are doing the same thing with less content. No shade, lots of shade. But I just want to tell you that I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And tell me, what do you think is the most innovative thing you're doing right now because of COVID to meet the needs, whether it's just church service or whether it's social service or whether it's activism and mobilization? What you doing out here?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to tie both of those in together now in this next campaign we're going to launch soon. It's going to be Justice Con. We're hosting a virtual and in-person social justice, faith and freedom conference and festival. And so we're going to hopefully create centers where people can serve food and groceries to communities in places that are most vulnerable, and, you know, wonderful. Testing, as well as, you know, training and social justice and advocacy happening digitally. So trying to really build this digital, which is this physical and virtual, or the physical and virtual world, digital world, all one inside together. So that's next. And so we look forward to what that looks forward to. And if anyone wants to connect, justicecon.co is the website, and we're going to launch it pretty soon. Looking forward to what this can be, you know.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Let me know how the BMC can help. I think that that's great. And I'm not only excited because you're doing Justice Con, I'm just excited that you're continuing to, you know, in the midst of all that's happening, you know, let the creative juices flow, still thinking about the people, still trying to do legitimate ministry. But I want you to make a commitment to me that in all of this, you're going to take good care of yourself.
Yes. For the first time in 71 days, I got a haircut today, and I
Okay.
think my barber wants me to keep this afro. So I'm taking care of myself. I'm enjoying myself. God is good, and as long as there's good, clean water for all of us to be able to drink, hopefully, I'm gonna stay hydrated and keep this skin glowing.
I hear you. And you're working on the PhD. You making time for that?
Yes. Making time for that, reading some good books, and I encourage those who are interested in the nation's only PhD in African American preaching and sacred rhetoric to check into it. And I think what we're doing is looking at we're for one affirming that our work, what we have produced as a community, this our legacy, our story is worth research and it's worth scholarship.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And one of my faves, Dr. Frank Thomas, is leading this. And I absolutely love him. And I'm really excited to see the work of, the classes to come and, what you guys will produce. And I'm sure it's going to be amazing. But I have to say thank you. Even though you're my friend, I never take for granted having anybody on here. I want you to be healthy. So if you would have said no, I wouldn't have even shaded you. I would have understood. But the fact that you said yes, I just want to say
I'm doing the best I can.
I know, but take good care of yourself, and you're doing great work. And if you stop for a moment so that you can live a little longer, I promise you we'll get over it. So take good care of yourself, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Take care. God bless.
Absolutely, you too. So I want to bring Stephanie LaFlora back for a moment so we can talk about the Black church data that we have. Again, if you can go to irunbmc.com/BMC so you can take the weekly pastor poll. I did promise the team that I was going to have a new poll out today. I just realized that. But, my baby had his first birthday, and, you're trying to raise a little Black boy in this America. So I did spend my time just trying to love on him and remember all the good things that exist in life in the midst of all of this going on. But many people sent me the survey about viewership, Stephanie. I believe I sent it to you, and the increase in viewership or decrease. And so people were like, this is not true for black churches. I was like, okay, calm down. I'm going to do one for you then. And so I think that's what I'll do. I think that's going to be the first survey that I put on the platform, because now we can do custom surveys. So I will do that, and I will send it out and see if we can get a little bit of data before Thursday. If not, we'll definitely deliver the following Thursday. So because you do this so well, Stephanie, give us something to look forward to. Tell us why we're hopeful, even in the midst of all of this.
Yes. I think never more than now have leaders and organizations been able to listen and to respond. Yeah. And so I think that we're empowered by that ability right now. Pastor Green said that you have to be in the trenches. And I think that he is 100% right. And I want to say, although this might not sound like encouragement at first,
okay,
it is, and that is that when this ends, people will remember the churches that help people.
Mm-hmm.
They will remember the churches that empathized. Yes. They will remember the churches that did not open too soon.
Yeah,
the ones that use this moment as a way to bring people together. And so I think that that's the opportunity that's presented to us right now. And things are changing so rapidly. I believe that there will be, if you could even fast forward 5 years from now, one thing my husband and I say to each other all the time, especially on anniversaries, we say, I wonder what we'll know in a year. It's just a common thing we say. Yeah. And on birthdays and things like that. And I just had my birthday a couple weeks ago.
And you tried to like slick have it too and not tell nobody, right?
It's not like I was going anywhere. There's that. But he said, I wonder what we'll know in a year. And it was really powerful this year. We say it every year, but it was really powerful this year because I had my birthday in quarantine. And so last year when he said, I wonder what we'll know in a year, we know a lot.
Yeah.
Information is extremely powerful and allows you to do things you just wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And at scale, listening means not having to ask every single person each week. Is to use technology to be able to ask everyone and have everyone be included and have all voices heard and to be able to slice and dissect the information. I look at data where I'm able to see, like with the data that you've gotten from the people who are watching the show, I've been able to look at things like, okay, well, generationally, what does that look like? Okay, in terms of people who are experiencing health difficulties, what does that look like? What does the profile of a person look like who has had a ton of job disruption or is facing financial difficulty? You can look at the profiles of people and be able to say, okay, here is a prescription from a faith perspective, from a practical perspective, where we can actually address different parts, different segments of our population, and really offer something real. And that looks like partnerships. That doesn't look like just doing it on your own. That looks like looking at your community, seeing what the needs are, anticipating those needs, and then making the relationships that you can make in your community to be able to recommend great therapists, to be able to recommend, a great counselor or a great job resource, And so I think that those are the things, those are the innovative ideas that are critical right now. So if you're at home and you're wondering when things are going to be back to normal, or if you're wondering what this new normal looks like, I think take time to really, first of all, listen and get this information, but also look at what resources are out there. I mean, we're talking every week about these surveys and we're talking every week about the data, but there's a lot of resources, and I would not just only talk about what we're doing. I think look at everything that's out there and see how you can meet the needs of the people in your community, and take this moment to build relationships. Even if you're a small church, you know what I'm saying? Like these people, people are at home. People need their time right now.
Right. And another thing too, Stephanie, is once they have the data, it's easier to build relationships, right? And to partner with people. It's one thing to tell a clinic, we got a lot of need. It's another thing to say, well, out of my 700 person church, 520 said they're experiencing high anxiety. Are you willing to leave us out there? There's so much power in data, and there's so much that we can do and change if we use it appropriately, well, inappropriately too, but if we want to use it and take advantage of it, I want you to use it appropriately, but I'm just saying, there's so much you can do. And so I'm really hoping people take advantage of it. If you want to just go straight to register, you can go to weeklypastorpoll.com/BMC, or if you want to go ahead and go on our website to sign up so that you can get weekly poll briefings, then you can go to irunbmc.com/events. And we look forward to talking to you. It's been a good night. It's always a good night. It's a good night because you commit to coming and spending some time with us, to being in the chats, to sharing, to having watch parties. And that's why it's a good night. It's not a good night because of what Brianna can do alone, what Stephanie can do alone, even what our guests can do. Oh, and I'm sorry. I totally forgot, because you guys are probably waiting for Tasha Page Lockhart. I'm so sorry. Please pray for her. She got sick with a migraine last minute and couldn't be here. So we'll make sure we have her on another time, but we wanted you to pray for her, and just know that I didn't just scam you. I promise you she was coming until a couple hours ago. And so thank you so much. Please don't forget to register. Please don't forget to create surveys, hop on, know your people, know your community. You do not have to guess at what your people need. You do not have to guess at what your community needs. You can ask and then use your resources and be great steward of your resources by meeting the needs that are clear and apparent and voiced. So until next time, I hope you have an amazing rest of the week. We're all doing the best we can to get through, the tough times. So just take a deep breath and do everything that you can to live to fight another day. Thank you so much, and good night.